Welcome to this private meeting called by Oxa Capital regarding an extraordinary investment opportunity in the commercial real estate space in Southeastern Europe. Before we begin, let me introduce myself so that everyone knows who they're listening to, and let me remind you that I'll try to keep this as short as possible and that we will be taking questions at the end. So my name is Fis Malësori. I serve as Chief Investment Officer at Oxa Capital, and I'm educated in the United States with an MBA in Investment Management and Finance. And I've spent the last 5 years leading teams of highly skilled professionals in the United States and in Europe in a wide area of industries from asset management to nonprofits. At Oxa Capital, I spent most of my time in portfolio strategy and management, financial modeling, risk management, and investor relations. That's enough about me. And in case somebody wants to know more about my experiences, I certainly enjoy talking about myself over a drink or a cup of tea. But back to what we're here for. Oxa Capital is an asset management and investment company based in Pristina, Kosovo, spearheading the transformation of capital markets in the region. At Oxa Capital, we're constantly striving to build strong and long-term partnerships with like-minded investors and become your partner of choice in the regions by providing the most diverse set of investment opportunities with risk mitigation and long-term returns at the forefront of our strategy. There are 4 major areas that we feel confident and competent to not only invest our own time and money in, but also to bring along investors from all over the world. And those are real estate, venture capital, social impact, and securities trading. Now, this mission of ours has been driving the success of our whole family of companies that are, as some of you may already know, part of the holding family of Oxa Group. From manufacturing, commercial real estate, and asset management to hospitality and project management companies, for the past 20 years, Oxa Group has facilitated and enabled the successful growth of more than a dozen companies to this day. And my friends, this is just the humble beginning. With a rich pipeline of internally ideated companies, we're on a path to expand our portfolio and exposure to even more industries in the coming years. All this success of the group and its subsidiaries is, of course, only due to the hard work of its people and its founder and CEO in particular, Mr. Nasser Hoxha, our visionary entrepreneur, chief strategist, and mentor. Alongside Mr. Hoxha, our Oxa Capital's executive team is comprised of Mr. Miftari, our deputy CEO, Mr. Abruzzese, our own OCM International CEO, and myself, all competent in a wide range of areas and responsible for specific parts of the work, while working as a team to achieve the goals we set for the future. Now, on behalf of the team and the whole Oxa Group holding family, it's our pleasure to introduce to you this opportunity that we are very excited about. Gjilan Mall, an Oxa Capital commercial real estate project. Having identified a clear gap and opportunity in southeastern Kosovo's retail space, we have decided to design and develop our second outdoor pedestrian-style shopping center. And for the past 2 years, we've been preparing and working diligently on this project, so that we can stand here today presenting this opportunity and invite you to come along in what we believe is an extraordinary investment proposition. And to keep this brief and to the point, I will dive right into the investment thesis so that we can all start thinking about and understand the financial soundness of this proposition. Now, through this presentation and the package of documents that you will individually receive via email at your request, we're offering up to 500,000 preferred shares of Gjilan Mall JSC, that is Joint Stock Company, at 10 euros per share and a minimum subscription of 100,000 shares or 1 million euros per investor. Now, based on our previous experiences in commercial real estate, and I'll talk about those in more detail in a bit, the total capital expenditure for Gjilan Mall is expected to be around 28 million euros that we aim to raise through both the equity and debt instruments via this private placement offering, our own skin in the game, and real estate debt financing. Now, the team and I have worked hard crunching the numbers and have relied heavily on risk management techniques to account for various uncertainty factors in both the economics and operational side of things. The project's base case MPV is expected to be around 14 million euros with an IRR of roughly 15%, a payback period of 7 years, a DSCR, that is debt service coverage ratio, of 2.0, and a debt to sales ratio of less than 30%. Now, I'll go over more detailed projections, including a sophisticated risk model at the financials section of this presentation in a bit, so we can share our comfort in these numbers with you. Now, obviously, you might be wondering, what's our exit strategy, right? What's our opportunities to make money? How do we make money off of this, right? That's a fair question. Well, we're happy to announce that we will be paying annual dividends to our shareholders and offer liquidation avenues in the future. More details on these are available and thoroughly described in our private placement memorandum that you will receive via email. Okay, well, this might all sound great and fine, but what's the strategy? How do we make this happen, right? How do we plan to make this happen? Well, there's 4 major aspects of our strategy that illustrate how we've decided to go about this. Our development costs are managed and optimized through a BOT model, development model, where we build, operate, and transfer the property to the landowners at the end of the investment horizon, thereby minimizing our capital expenditures at the get-go. A prime location for this development has also been negotiated and contracted that will ensure catchment and stability in revenues. We also have one of our own sister companies in charge of management, OCM International, who's a specialized office and center management firm that makes sure we capitalize on this competitive advantage of ours. And finally, a diversified capital structure will allow for maximum optimization of cash flows that is ultimately in the benefit of all investors. Now, as I mentioned, the location that was chosen for this development project is truly unmatched for the city of Gjilan. Being only 3 to 5 minutes by car, depending on traffic, and in close proximity to the center, surrounded by a dense residential area, this truly is a prime location that makes Gjilan Mall a very attractive investment from the location perspective. The catchment area for this project includes 3 subgroups that consist of up to 3 million citizens of the region, with around 300,000 residents in a radius of just 30 minutes from the location. Now, when I mentioned our experience and competence in commercial real estate development and management, I was referring to our portfolio company, OCM International, as I mentioned earlier, that is the first company in the Balkans specialized in development, design, leasing, and management of office and shopping centers that gives us this competitive advantage in the industry in the region. And it's therefore no surprise to us that our KPIs, key performance indicators of an already operating center, the village, and the city of Ferizaj, are extraordinary and provide for a great model for us to replicate in future projects, including Gjilan Mall. Now, for the past few years, we've seen amazing collection rates, increasing annual traffic, extremely low vacancy rates, and a tenant waiting list of more than 100 companies waiting to secure a space in our shopping center. It's also particularly because of this specialized competency of ours that we've been able to negotiate and already pre-lease more than half of the gross leasable area for Gjilan Mall to bring brand names in various industries, from fashion and household to electronics and entertainment. So, as our second open-air pedestrian mall, a total of roughly 34,000 square meters of GLA will be rented out to around 110 tenants. And Gjilan Mall will offer around 1,000 seats on the food court, a huge cinema with 800 seats, and more than 1,000 parking spots for visitors. And a carefully designed merchandising mix and size class mix was developed to optimize consumer spending, and thereby enable us to replicate the KPIs I mentioned earlier. Okay, I wouldn't wonder if some of you may be asking, so what's so special about this outdoor pedestrian style model, right? And that'd be a great question. And well, thanks to the experience and research from OCM International, we now know that the outdoor model generally has lower development, management, and maintenance costs than the indoor model. It also provides for lower rent costs to tenants, better accessibility to visitors, and encourages more spending than the indoor model, among other things. And in a second, you'll also see why the outdoor shopping malls are much more attractive to suburban cities than the indoor malls are. And as you can see, a unique structural and architectural design done by our own portfolio company, specialized in architectural design and construction project management, Arcadis, with lots of space to roam around and extremely accessible to save visitors from the long walks trying to find their cars at the parking lot away from the mall. Now, before we go back to the financials, I want to go over some key milestones that we've already hit that show how this has been unfolding and what we are looking forward to in the coming weeks and months ahead before we start collecting revenues. And it starts, of course, with a feasibility study that shows it makes sense to put effort into such a project. And this was done in late 2019, and that quickly followed the contracting of the location, and thereby also followed with the architectural design and immediately with the pre-leasing process, which, as I mentioned, currently stands at about 50% of GLA. And as that continues, we're currently finalizing the necessary paperwork and permits that will allow construction to begin in the coming weeks. And we've already negotiated large parts of the non-equity capital required and are on track to raise the necessary financing by the end of this year. We also estimate that around 25% of the space will start to operate in the fall of this year, and by early next summer, 100% of the space will be rented out and generate revenues for Gjilan Mall JSC. And that's a great transition now back to the financial outlook that I want to emphasize in particular here today, as that's what will likely be the key driver of your decision-making in deciding to invest or not to invest in a proposition like this. So, as I mentioned, the team and I, we've crunched and re-crunched the numbers using sophisticated financial modeling and risk management tools so we can account for uncertainties in possible development, operational, and financing risks, and thereby increase our confidence in pursuing this venture. And of course, to be able to confidently stand here in front of you today and extend this investment opportunity to you as well. And as with any commercial real estate venture, we've modeled the net present value of all cash flows, and it turns out that when accounting for all probabilities and risks in development, operational, and financing variables, the model predicts an 83% chance of positive NPV, with a mean of roughly 10 million and an upside potential of up to 41 million euros. And with a probability of IRR being below historical cost of capital at 16%, this is truly a low-risk deployment of capital and speaks volumes in terms of financial outlook. Nevertheless, 16% isn't zero. So it was really important to the team to analyze this downside probability in more detail. And when we rank all input variables in order of impact on the output mean, that is NPV, it's evident that the most important two variables to examine and manage are the rent per square meter rate, as well as the cost of capital. And with the lion's share of financing already negotiated at favorable terms, we want to shift our focus here today and look at the rent rate impact on this downside potential. And when we do that, plotting the rent rates with NPV outcomes, the model indicates an almost linear correlation between the two, and very importantly, shows that it is only if we cannot manage to maintain average rent rates of 14 euros per square meters over the lifetime of the project that it is possible that NPV might be negative. And remember when I mentioned our pre-leasing of half of the space already, led by OCM International? Well, those pre-leasing agreements are in favor of rent prices higher than the threshold I just mentioned, 14 euros per square meter, and thereby make this downside potential even less probable. And as I quickly mentioned earlier, the investment is predicted to pay back its capital expenditure in about 8 years on average, and a very low probability of the investment take more than 10 years to pay back its initial capital outflow. And there's also a significant portion of debt financing for Gjilan Mall, so we aim for a minimum DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, of 2.0, that is twice our debt payments over the forecasting period. And in that regard, we predict an 80% chance of being able to achieve such objectives and comfortably service our debt, leaving plenty of profits to distribute to equity investors on an annual basis. Now, looking at our profit and loss forecast, we predict an above industry average net operating income to sales ratio of approximately 80% and a compound annual growth rate of 3% over the forecast period. And yeah, as much as we're excited about Gjilan Mall, we have a pretty cool pipeline of ventures in the workings and are excited to bring them to market as soon as possible as well. And within our investment areas and expansion strategy, we've got more unique commercial real estate projects that we're really excited about, some really cool social impact ventures, and something that will truly blow your mind in the fintech space very soon. And we'd love to talk to you about those in more detail in another meeting, or just reach out to us, and we're happy to see how we can partner in our pipeline as well. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for your attention and patience, and with the level of detail. But hey, who wants to spend their hard-earned money at times of uncertainty without assurance and without data-driven decision-making processes? We don't. Now, if there's any questions, I can take a few now. And of course, if there's questions that we can't answer now, feel free to shoot us an email and we will definitely get back to you in writing as quick as possible. And yeah, I'll turn it back to the floor. And if there's any questions from the audience online or from the audience here, then let's take those questions before we go back to a 30-second video of Gjilan Mall so that we can quickly get an immersive experience of how it will look like. And yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate it.